Okay, so let me just say this straight up. If you've been sleeping on the Toronto Blue Jays farm system, you need to wake up right now, because something real is brewing in this organization, and I don't think enough people are actually talking about it the right way. And I get it. I get why people have written this system off. When you spend years watching a farm system basically exist to service one generation of talent, and that generation was Vladdy and Bo, which, fair, those are two generational players, it can feel like the cupboard behind them is always bare. Like the Blue Jays are perpetually one injury away from a crisis. That narrative has followed this organization for a while now, and honestly, it wasn't totally wrong. But it is wrong now, and I want to break down exactly why, because the 2026 version of this system tells a completely different story than what we've been used to. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which is the trading. Because before we even get to who's left in the system right now, we have to acknowledge what Toronto has been doing with prospects over the last few years, and specifically what they did in 2025, because it was aggressive, like really aggressive. Khal Stephen was the number 5 prospect in the system. Kendry Rojas was number 6. Juaron Brown was number 10. And then they threw in Alan Roden on top of all of that. Gone. All of them. And what did they get back? Shane Bieber, Louis Varland, Sir Anthony Dominguez, big league contributors, guys who help you win games right now. Now here's the thing that I think gets lost in that conversation. If Stephen, Rojas, Brown, and Roden were still Blue Jays prospects today, this system cracks the top 10 nationally, easily, maybe higher. But they're not here because the front office made a deliberate decision that the window is open and they are going to use every chip available to compete. That is not a failure of player development. That is player development working exactly the way it's supposed to work. You build the pipeline so you have currency to spend. Toronto has been spending it, and the pipeline keeps refilling. That's the part that's impressive to me. So who's left, and who should you actually care about going into 2026? Let's get into it. The name at the very top of the excitement meter for me, and I've said this before, but I'll keep saying it, is Trey Yesavage. When we talk about this system producing a true impact starter, a guy who could be a number 1 or number 2 on a playoff rotation, Yesavage is that conversation. He is the headliner, and the trajectory he's been on, the stuff, the feel for pitching at his age, he looks like a superstar in the making, and I don't think that's hyperbole. You pair him with JoJo Parker, Arjun Nimala, Johnny King at the top of this list, and the Blue Jays have something legitimately exciting to point to at the upper tier. But here's where I want to spend some real time today, because there are guys further down this list who I think are either being slept on entirely or who are about to have breakout years that nobody is prepared for. Juan Sanchez, number 7 on the updated list. I cannot overstate how high the organization is on this kid. Big frame, massive power potential, that part people know. But what makes Sanchez different, what makes people inside the organization light up when they talk about him, is the approach. The maturity at the plate for someone his age is legitimately unusual. Prospect lists are full of guys with tools. Tools are everywhere in the minor leagues. What separates the guys who make it from the guys who don't is usually the mental side, the ability to make adjustments, to not panic when something isn't working, to have a plan every single at-bat. And Sanchez has that. Outside of the top-tier names I just mentioned, if you're asking me who has the best chance to explode in 2026 and make everyone pay attention, Sanchez is the name. Write it down now. Now, Jake Cook, number 11. And I need you to understand something before I even get into the scouting stuff. This man is fast. Not like, oh, he can run fast. Like genuinely ridiculous, made the evaluators put down their clipboards at the combine fast. And he did that while dealing with quad issues, by the way. The 2025 third-round pick is the best pure athlete in this entire system, and he's still incredibly raw offensively because he spent most of his college career at Southern Mississippi as a pitcher. He switched to hitting. The ceiling on this guy is enormous. The floor is also, let's be real, uncertain because there's a difference between being fast and being a polished base stealer, and there's a lot of offensive development that still has to happen. But the Blue Jays' plan is essentially to let him run wild on the bases while the development staff works on refining his approach. And if it comes together, Cook might be the most fun player in this system to watch. Not most projectable, not most likely to make the All-Star game. Fun. There's a version of Jake Cook who is an absolute problem at the big league level, and I think people are going to be talking about him a lot more by the end of this season. Josh Kasevich, 13 on the list. And here's how I know to take Kasevich seriously. Ross Atkins keeps mentioning him. Mark Shapiro keeps mentioning him. The player development staff keeps mentioning him. When names keep coming up in those conversations, repeatedly, unprompted, over the course of multiple seasons, you listen. That's just a lesson I've learned covering this organization. Kasevich had his 2025 derailed by injuries, which is brutal. But he looks great in spring camp. He's driving the ball harder than before, and the defense has always been there. There are people inside the organization who genuinely believe they are looking at a future big leaguer when they watch Kasevich, and not in the distant future either. Keep this name on your radar. Now, I want to take a second to talk about something that doesn't get enough credit in these prospect conversations, which is the financial reality of player development and why the quieter success stories matter just as much as the headliners. Everyone wants to talk about the Yesavages and the Guerreros. And, yeah, developing a true star from within is the dream. It's the goal. I'm not dismissing that. But think about what the Blue Jays have also been able to do with guys like Addison Barger, Mason Fluharty, Braden Fisher. Fisher came over from the Dodgers, and the Blue Jays turned him into a reliable bullpen piece in a flash. Fluharty is another example. These guys aren't making headlines on prospect lists, but every time Toronto develops a bullpen arm internally, they're saving themselves somewhere between $4 and $7 million that they would otherwise be spending on a veteran free agent just to plug a hole. And that matters enormously right now, because this is an organization that is pressing up against competitive balance tax thresholds and spending at record levels to build a winner. When you're operating at that level financially, every dollar you can offset on the back end through internal development is a dollar you can redirect towards something else. A rental at the deadline, a rotation upgrade, an extension for a core piece. The math is real. The bullpen depth and the bench depth that comes out of this system isn't just nice to have. It is structurally important to how the Blue Jays build a competitive roster. So when you zoom out and look at the full picture of where this system stands in 2026, here's what you actually have. You have a clear top tier with Yesavage and the guys alongside him who represent genuine impact potential at the big league level. You have a middle tier that is more interesting than it gets credit for, with Sanchez potentially ready to announce himself, Cook bringing the kind of upside that makes evaluators dream, and Kasevich quietly building a case to be a big leaguer sooner than people expect. And you have an organizational depth and player development infrastructure that has consistently produced usable big league pieces while also providing the front office with real trade chips to go out and get impact players when the window demands it. Is this a top 5 system? No. Is it top 10? If they hadn't dealt 4 of their best prospects last year, it absolutely would be. But rankings miss the point sometimes. The point is whether a farm system is actually doing its job, whether it's helping the big league team win, whether it's giving the front office options. And right now, the Toronto